Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the next portion of our multiplication and division with whole numbers and decimals. This week, we are going to be taking the next step from dividing a 4-digit whole number dividend by a 2-digit whole number divisor, and now we're going to be talking about how to divide decimals as a dividend by a whole number divisor. Now, I've kind of set this up kind of similarly to our Avid 3-column format, because in this first column, I'm going to list the problem that I'll be working. The next column will be the standard algorithm. The next column will be the cookie thief method. And then in this final column will be our answer. Okay, so our first problem this evening is going to be 9/10 divided by 3. So for setting this up for standard algorithm, just like we always would, our divisor goes on the outside, our dividend goes on the inside. Now this is what I want you to pay attention to, because it's very, very simple, but if you let yourself get confused, it's going to mess you up. See this decimal? I want you to draw an arrow up from it, and I just want you to put that decimal right in that place, directly above. Just carry it straight up, and then you do nothing else with it, and you divide like normal. 3 can go into 9 3 times, because 3 times 3 is 9. 9 minus 9 is 0. Now, with decimals, if your difference after subtracting is not 0, you will have to take further steps, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. So because the difference here is 0 and we have no numbers to bring down, our final answer is 3/10. Now let's look at the cookie thief method. So the cookie thief's mob boss calls him and says, "Hey, I've got an apartment complex I want you to go to." He says, "It's really small, but I think we're going to be able to get some cookies out of it." And so just like we did in the first time, this decimal is going to come up and we're going to leave it there. We're not going to do anything else with it. So the cookie thief comes up to the apartment complex and he circles and he says, "Man, there's only one person living here. This is kind of crazy, but okay." So he looks into the window of the one apartment that has somebody living there and he says, well, there are 9 cookies. And if I have to steal sets of 3, I know that I can take 3 sets, because 3 times 3 is 9. No cookies escape. There are no other apartments to go to. So he is done. Okay, so our answer is simply 3/10. Now let's take a look at 4/10 divided by 2. Just like before, my divisor goes on the outside, my dividend goes on the inside. I'm going to drag my decimal up to my quotient and divide like normal. 2 can fit inside 4 2 times. 2 times 2 is 4. We have nothing left over, nothing to bring down, so my final answer is 2/10. So my cookie thief gets a call from his mob boss that he needs to steal cookies in sets of 2. And he goes to this apartment complex and he says, "Man, there's not a lot of people living here." We're going to move our decimal up into the quotient just like we did before. And he looks into the one window and says, "Well, I can steal 2 sets of cookies." And 2 times 2 is 4, so he steals all 4 cookies. There are no other apartments to go to. So 2/10 is our answer, is our quotient. Now I'm actually going to write the word quotient over here to remind you. Now let's take a look at something that's going to be a little more difficult. We're going to divide 60 hundredths divided by 12. First of all, using standard algorithm, my divisor goes on the outside, my dividend goes on the inside, and just like before, my decimal gets dragged up and I leave it alone. I know that 12 cannot fit inside 6, so 12 times 0 is 0. I'm going to bring down my next number. 12 can go into 60 5 times because 12 times 5 is 60, and 60 minus 60 is 0. Okay. Now for our cookie thief method. Our cookie thief gets a call from his mob boss to go to an apartment, and he goes up and he shakes his head because his boss has been sending him to these apartment complexes that really don't have anybody living there. But he says, you know what, it's not my job to argue with the boss. I'm just going to go with what he says. Well, he looks in the first window and he says, I can't steal any cookies from this first apartment. And so he watches as all 6 cookies escape and they run next door. He circles the building, he finds the next window, and he says, well, I can steal 5 sets because 12 times 5 is 60. No cookies escape. There's no other apartments. So we are left with 5 hundredths. All right. Now let's take a look at our last one. I have 50 hundredths divided by 5. My divisor goes on the outside. My dividend goes on the inside. I'm going to drag my decimal up to the top. 5 can go into 5 one time. 5 times 1 is 5. Nothing is left over. Bring down my 0. 5 goes into nothing, no times. 5 times 0 is 0. Nothing left over. There's nothing to bring down and no remainder, so we have our final answer. So once again, the cookie thief is sent out to an apartment complex to steal cookies in sets of 5. He goes into the apartment complex and he shakes his head again. He says, you know what? These apartments really have not had anybody in them lately. But again, it's not the cookie thief's job to question his boss. So he looks in the first window and he says, well, I can take 1 set. And so he takes that 5 cookies. No cookies run next door, and he circles the building. And he comes to the next window and says, well, I can't take any cookies from there because there's none left. There's no other apartments, no remainder. So we found our final answer, which is 10 hundredths. All right, so that's pretty simple and straightforward. That is dividing a single or a 2-digit decimal by a 1-digit whole number divisor. And if you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a great day.